Casuals hate him. Instant win card, fucking broken. Competitive players thinks it's a joke, but it top worlds, and did nothing else of note. Fuck Exodia. All my homies hate Exodia. Hello everyone, it's JEGPEG Yu-Gi-Oh! And today I'm going to be talking about Exodia the Forbidden One. Exodia is one of the most well-known cards in pretty much just card games, not even just Yu-Gi-Oh! So much so that a card that instantly wins a game is generally referred to as an Exodia. Even people who've never touched Yu-Gi-Oh! Likely know what Exodia does. But if for some reason you don't, allow me to explain. Exodia has 5 different cards. 4 normal monsters that represent 2 arms and 2 legs, and an effect monster that represents the head with the effect that automatically wins the game if all 5 pieces are in your hand. After that, you get to obliterate your opponent for destroying your grandpa's Blue Eyes White Dragon card, which you could have just kept for yourself for this point. I'm over-analyzing a children's anime. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a small handful of instant win cards, however the most basic of them is Exodia. A card that can win you the game without having to play it regularly can be busted, especially if it's not kept in check and kind of hampered down a little bit. After all, no one wants to play a game where you don't even get a chance to play. Just ignore it, Emancipator. It doesn't exist. That's all besides the point. While Exodia is one of the most iconic monsters in all of not just Yu-Gi-Oh! But card games in general, that doesn't exactly mean it's beloved in the actual game. In fact, for the most part, both casual and competitive players tend to dislike Exodia for different reasons, and that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Let's start with the casual side of things. Now, the fact that Exodia wins the game without ever having to interact with the opponent, don't show them a Dragon Link on board. Because of this, it leads to a lot of people being just adamantly against it. They see it as a quote-unquote fake way to win the game, or just playing a different game altogether. Exodia decks, in the casual sense, usually play tons of stall cards that will get them to Exodia. Usually they consist of stuff like Battle Fader, Swords of Revealing Light, general cards that aren't fun to play against. And why this is so important is because at the casual level, it is a lot slower compared to the competitive level. And don't get me wrong, that's not a bad thing at all. But because of that, Exodia becomes a much more viable strategy, especially since Exodia pieces are searchable by something like Blue Dragon Summoner. In a much slower kind of game, this makes it really easy to get Exodia pieces into your hand with how easily searchable they are with battle floaters. Pair this with popular casual star cards like the aforementioned Swords of Revealing Light, and this makes Exodia a fairly consistent strategy given the circumstances. And that's why Exodia is so hated in the casual sphere. It's a really easy to obtain instant win condition, and that's not something anyone would really like. Being able to just play a whole different game and an easy way to win almost feels like playing a playground game, pulling some BS way to win and making the victory feel unearned. Most of the time, casuals will actively make house rules banning Exodia. Just look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Boomers on EDO Pro with the no Synchro XEs Link Exodia ritual lobbies. In the casual scene, Exodia is like this forbidden, broken card, and often think the fact that it can instantly win the duel is ridiculous and should never exist. Before I continue, I understand this is a bit of a generalization, but this is going off of both what I've seen as well as personal experiences. Before I started taking Yu-Gi-Oh! More competitively, I was one of the people who thought Exodia was one of the most busted things out there. Since then, I've learned why Exodia isn't exactly going to be topping any competitive event. Except that one time. Now that we've talked about Exodia in the casual sense and their feelings, let's look at why the competitive scene sees things a little bit differently. Exodia has never really been on many competitive players' minds, and really hasn't been for years. A card that can win the game before the opponent can even play. How could it not be good? Well, a lot of reasons actually. In the competitive scene, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is fast, as in one turn and the game can be over fast. And that's Exodia's biggest issue. If you can't get to Exodia on your first turn, you're gonna lose the duel 9 times out of 10. Exodia is very much an all or nothing strategy. With how easy a board is to set up, especially one that can do lethal damage, Exodia decks can't survive not winning on turn 1. In addition, there's plenty of cards that throw just an entire wrench into Exodia decks. Cards like Ash Blossom and Joyous Rings can just force the turn to end right then and there with one proper activation. If you don't get to Exodia, the cards meant to stall can easily be negated. There are way too many cards that negate in the competitive scene. So cards that make Exodia so good on the more casual levels of play are pretty much non-existent in the competitive scene because of how easily they're taken care of. Cards such as Called by the Grave and DD Crow can even permanently get rid of an Exodia piece if any wind up in the graveyard, which some Exodia strategies do that. Deep Draw Exodia is really the only viable way to play an Exodia deck, and it's incredibly hard to play successfully as well. Now, there is one elephant in the room in the way of Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship 2012. Jarrell Pro Winston, sorry if I pronounced that name wrong, piloted Exodia at Worlds all the way to a top 8 finish. The only monsters that weren't Exodia were 1 copy of Sangan, which searched out the head, and 3 copies of Swift Scarecrow for stalling. The rest of the deck was filling spell and trap cards to get to draw Exodia or to stall. This was also before 1 Day of Peace and Upstart Goblin were limited, so access to free draw and stalling was good to have. This was very much an impressive feat, and props to Pro Winston for getting a top with the most unexpected deck choice. However, the deck would not hold up in the current metagame. Not only are 2 of its key cards restricted in 1 Day of Peace and Upstart Goblin, but trap cards are simply far too slow to be used in a viable strategy nowadays, and half the cards in the topping deck list happen to be trap cards. With cards like Lightning Storm, Red Reboot, hand traps, and various forms of negates on monsters, Exodia just doesn't hold up, and can only win if it doesn't get interrupted and if it goes first. If Exodia goes second, the opponent's already going to have an established board and a bunch of negates out most of the time, meaning that you're not going to be able to do your deep draw Exodia strategy very well and consistently, if even at all. The various of outside factors that are determined before the duel even begins is just not worth it to risk playing Exodia. While more draw cards are in the game now can be combined with other older ones such as Part of Extravagance, Allure of Darkness, Trade-In, Dangers if you're crazy, and Part of Desires if you're a psychopath.
Or play Paleozoic Exodia like a true madman.
These just aren't enough to make Exodia good. Why play Exodia when you can play a deck that does the same amount of work with much more payoff and less risk of losing? Something like Dragon FTK, you get the same first turn win experience, and even that deck is good going second. So why would you play Exodia? For the culture, that's why. But because of how all or nothing Exodia is and how fragile it is as a deck, competitive players don't give it a second thought. While they might cheer for it because of its rogue status, if even that, most competitive players hate playing Exodia for how easily it can fall apart. And some people still just hate Exodia because at the end of the day, it's still uninteractive, even if there's more ways to interact with it in the competitive sphere. And so, that's why Exodia is hated just about wherever it goes. Casual players hate it for making the game unfun and slow, and competitive players hate it for, well, not being very good. So, it's in limbo, or outside of gimmick decks for a stream or a video, it's not going to be seeing the light of day, because many people in the player base just simply don't like Exodia. It's the tragic tale of Exodia. Outside of the first episode of the anime and the one deciding moment in 2012, we've never really cheered for Exodia again. Unless you like this guy. And if you did, well, you probably played Part of Desires in Exodia, you crazy motherfucker. Thank you all for watching. I've been JEGPEG Yu-Gi-Oh! Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.